Well, hey everybody, this is Grant Moss and my colleague John Franklin's here with us. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. And we envision, at least I envision this, and I don't know about John, but envision this as just a chance to chat about what we've been able to do. And so I think we want to see what your questions are, where you're coming from to start off with. That way we have a good idea of what we're talking about, and then we can share what we've been able to do. Who wants to go first? Nose goes.
Can I just ask a question real fast myself? Heidi Eck, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm looking at something. It looks like, is that a pie?
Yes, it is.
Could you tell me what that is, please? That looks like a Greek symbol, right?
It is. So basically, if you were to take a can, let me see if I actually have a can right here close to me. How's that for service? So if you were to take a can like this and you were to take a string and go straight across the end of the can, that's considered the diameter. If you take that piece of string, it'll go around exactly 3 times plus a little bit. And that's what pi is, that 3.14. And of course, there's many more digits. They haven't been able to find all of them even to this day, but that's the concept behind it.
Right. And isn't March 14th Pi Day?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. And do you know what the most popular pie in America is?
Something else too. I don't.
It's pizza pie. And if you will go to Papa John's if you go to Papa John's on March 14th, you can get a coupon for Pie Day. Okay. Just to change the subject, do you know what National Corduroy Day is?
No.
It's 11/11 because the 4 ones were like the chords in corduroy. Okay, that's my icebreaker, people. If you don't have a question by now, I'm going to be quiet the rest of the session. Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate your participation, man.
Oh, you're just fine. I just bring up one thing because I saw that Grant was from Pittsburgh State. I also graduated from Pittsburgh State, so a little bit of connection there as well.
Okay. John's from Pittsburgh State too.
That's what I was saying. Go ahead.
No, Grant and I are in the same department, as a matter of fact.
Okay, so I did take Spanish when I was there. I took it from someone named Brett. Are they still there?
No, he's doing translating. He has got a translating service in Joplin now.
Okay. All right. Well, how's that for going off topic?
So Heidi, you teach math then? I'm assuming because you got
yes, I do. Yes. And I teach it where it's targeted toward technical students. So I'm teaching that. I teach that every fall. Then in the spring, I'm helping them with other things that are related to helping them get a job. But yes, I do help teach them the math part that helps them do the technical side of their programs.
So what do you want to know about how we use OER to help you?
Okay, so I guess my biggest thing would be, and I don't even know if this totally ties in. We've been looking at considering a different LMS or learning management system. And I have recently looked at the alternatives, and I don't think they're any better than what we have. And so this OER stuff appears to involve programming and giving the teacher more control over the way they present their content in a way that is user-friendly to the students. That makes it both easier for the students and the teachers. And that part makes me excited, but I feel like I don't have all of the computer programming knowledge that I need to do the best of it, be the best at this point.
Well, guess what? I don't have the computer knowledge myself either. And that's one thing in fact, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen and just show you the platform that I use. And I'm not selling it. I keep changing color here. I'm sorry. My camera's a little today. But anyway, I'll show you the platform. And it was, I don't know if you've met Jennifer throughout these past couple of days, but she's also at Pittsburgh State. She works at the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology. And she actually suggested this platform. I'm not trying to sell the platform. It's it's got ways that you can get in there and you can figure out without doing a lot of programming, because I don't do that myself either. And that was what I was concerned about when I started down the OER path. And just let me share what I've got. So this is in Spanish because that's what I do. This text, this is a text. This is the main text. This book is called, or this platform is called Pressbooks. And so that's just the one I happen to use. And all it really is a self-publishing platform. And so when you put it on here with the Creative Commons attribution, well, therefore it's OER. And so and what I've done in here is I've got an introduction, and it set all the books look the same, which may or may not help you, but all I did was take all the content and put them into different chapters for each class. So I have part 1 for Spanish 1, we have part 2 for Spanish 2, and part 3 for Spanish 3. But I did all this myself. It does take a long time to put data entry in because you want the content. I'll just show you I'm almost afraid to show you this. I might be a little embarrassed. But the content, we got the objectives for each chapter. And then what we have here is we have the content. So this is the first day of Spanish 1 right here. Look, I don't know who that ugly person is right there, but anyway, needless to, and actually somebody's got these weird faces, but anyway, so what I ended up doing is I made a bunch of YouTube videos and put them on here, and pretty soon this will be expanded to have speakers from all over the world so people can click on it and hear them. But I started off with this as place setters, and then I give a bunch of language. And so in class, we sit and we practice these, and you can also practice them at home. But so this is I just put all this content in. So it does take a while, but it's pretty user friendly once you figure it out. So I have no programming knowledge whatsoever. I just basically it says what do you want on this page? I said I'll embed this video. I will type in this text. I'll put in this image, and then we're good. John, do you want to talk about the platforms you use? I don't know, Heidi, is that helpful?
I can actually, what I was going to say was, can people respond to what you just said if they have some questions to ask you before we move on to me? And then before we move on to me, is anybody else using a different kind of platform in their classroom about which they'd like to speak up right now? Because I think you've opened up this really great door right now. So if we can continue to travel down that pathway before we get to me, I think that's what would make me happiest right now. So does anybody have any questions to ask Grant? Because he told you very simply, and he gave you a really nice overview about what it is that he's doing. But is there any question to ask him? Or does anybody else have a different kind of platform that they'd like to go ahead and bring to our attention right now?
Well, let's see. It looks like there are a couple of questions here in the chat. Let's see if I can answer those. Maybe that'll be good.
There you go. There you go.
Can you put assignments? Yes, sort of. Hey, that's a lame answer, but I set up in we use Canvas as the LMS, so I can put those assignments there. This is more like a text, so you could put the actual assignments in your text. That's all. You can, whatever content you want in there, you put it in there. That's not a problem. So
could you create a quiz within this textbook?
Yes, except for it's not as interactive as it would be in an LMS. Because what you see on there is what you get. So in fact, if you think about it as if here, let me show you this again, if I can, just to see it. So if you think about it as like a textbook, just imagine that these are pages, and you can actually in Pressbooks print up a PDF and it has pages and stuff if the students really want to do that. But you could put down like at the bottom or on the sides or whatever, you could have a quiz in there. It's just that you would have to update that every so often. You see what I mean? So it's not like an LMS in that way, like Canvas. You can put a quiz in there and then it's there forever until you don't use Canvas anymore, university or your college changes its idea. So it's not exactly set up like that. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat, yes.
Second thing, there's another question here. Do you link the Pressbook to LMS? Yes, you can. It's very simple. Like what I do is I just put a link in Canvas that we use. You can put in Blackboard or whichever LMS you use, and then you can do it by section. You just include the link for each chapter because each chapter has a different link. So Judy, does that answer your question? Okay. The next, so it says here, Pressbooks is like an ebook. It's actually a lot like an ebook, Tracy. You can take you've got actually publish it as an ebook. So it can be a PDF, an ebook, and that's the general idea of Pressbooks. If you do the PDF, do the link show, or what happens in the video? Oh, the video gets a little screwed up. Sometimes, just depending on what you've got embedded in there, the pages can look a little odd, but that's what it is. There are two on Pressbooks. There are a bunch of different options. There's a free version. You can get in there and try it if you'd like, and just kind of fiddle around and see what you think about it. Another thing to think about is I got the premium version, which is like $50, and there was like, I got a coupon for it or something on, searched on Groupon. But anyway, and it allows you to do a little bit more. There's a little more space. There's not watermarks and stuff. So in the PDF, you can still link to the video if the link's there. Sometimes it depends on the way that you've got it set up in Pressbooks. So lifetime or annual, it's until Pressbooks is gone, I've got the premium for the one book. So how that works, Tracy, is for each book that you create, you'll have to give them the one-time 50, I can't remember, the $59.99 or something like that. And so I've done three different texts. I've done four, but three I'm going to show you that are worthwhile so far. And I had to do a premium version for each of them. And I mean, you'll see, let me see if I can share this with you again. You'll see that they're very similar in format. It's nothing like really like, ooh, this is the one that I used this is Spanish 1. This is my 8th semester phonology course. You see how the first page is similar. It's set up in the same way. It's got an introduction. The content's over here. So that's, and the third book that I use is this history book for the Spanish Civil War. And see, they all look very similar. And that's what yesterday, somebody, I think John Perkins brought that up, saying, oh, well, they look very similar. If it's got the content, so they look all the same. So that, in that way, it's easy because you already know I was easier for me because I'm like, I know what I'm doing. So once I set that first one up, I could do similar, and I'm like, oh, I already know this program, and I can set it up in the same way.
Could I ask a couple of questions of you, Grant, that occurred to me while you were, and if anybody wants to go ahead and spin off of any of my questions, that'd be really, really great. Okay, can you, because to me, it seems like a term that with which I'm also familiar, but it hasn't really popped up a lot, is zero textbook cost.
Mm-hmm.
So could you maybe tell us a little bit about the relationship between OER and zero textbook cost? Because it seems to me that, I mean, I'm not sure you really used OER a lot in your textbook. It seems to me you created a great deal of your own content. Those are your videos. That's you on the video right there. That's not Paul McCartney. That's not some paid actor who's in the video, right? So could you talk to us a little bit about the relationship between OER and zero textbook cost? And then I'd like to ask you maybe 2 or 3 other questions if nobody else has a question.
So yeah, see, John's leading the witness. I'm just teasing John. But
you're not on trial here, okay? you're an expert witness is what you are, Grant. You're an expert witness, okay?
I don't know about that, but his question is a great point. For on campus, we have a designation here at Pittsburg State is zero textbook cost. And the difference, in my view, John, is between zero textbook cost and OER is you give it that Creative Commons attribution. Because of course it would belong to me, all that content would belong to me unless I gave it that attribution. So that, and that says it on the first, I'll go back there just real fast. If on the very first, if I can get there, on the very first page, I'm sorry, let's see, I got to go back here. See, it just says here it's Creative Commons. And so that means that people can use it, they can, as they need to, within certain bounds. And one of the reasons why I set it up in the way I did is because I do have embedded, one of my colleagues made some really good videos that are a lot better than mine, and I'll have to show you this maybe, but it's really, his videos were set up based on that Creative Commons the specific Creative Commons attribution. So I used the same one in my text. So I didn't overstep my bounds. And I asked him about it. He said, yeah, that sounds fine. But what he ended up doing, maybe I'll show you this too. Let me share my screen again. But what he ended up doing is, these are not me. So that's a great question, John. These are, and they're not actors, they're real people. And what I did is I used the same attribution from Creative Commons that he did. So now we have other video embedded here. And somebody asked about assignments before. I have an assignment that's here, but it also gives a better explanation in our LMS, you know. So each chapter has a couple videos to watch. And then down here, I just say, oh, by the way, this was created on this with my colleague who said I could use it under this Creative Commons license. I think that probably answers your question, John.
It did, as a matter of fact, and I appreciate that. And I think it's whenever we go through enrollment, ZTC is one of the designations for our classes. So advisors and students can look for those three letters, ZTC. And if everything else is the same and they want to take a class that has zero textbook cost, as opposed to a class where there is a textbook for which they'll have to pay, then they're able to enroll in the zero textbook cost. Okay, so the next question that I had, somebody had asked about links. So your chapters that's over on the left-hand side, right? Does that links to the chapters itself? If you click on that, okay. So
Yep.
All the links are within the document itself. Are there any links that go outside the document?
Yes, there are. And that's a great question. And I'll show you that real fast. Let me go back there again. So these links, the videos, I mean, they're embedded. So the videos are embedded. These links, if you click on them, I'm not going to do them now, but they take you, they're also embedded, but you can also click on this link here and it has some other interactive activities on my colleague's website that created the video. What I've also done is on the reading portion here, it takes you out to other, I've got links to other things. And so what I've done here is I've said, the content here does not belong to me, it belongs to those who created it. So what's great about Spanish is I want authentic text. And they can read my text all the time, but I want to be authentic. So you click on this one and it takes it to this authentic text that doesn't belong to me. So yes, you can't, and I have a bunch of links like you can see right here. This is one example of one of those links, and it's really great. I can't take credit for any of this content, but I can take students and show them, look what's going on. Look at this over in the Spanish speaking world. This is real stuff. It's not just in the classroom.
Right, you're not taking credit for it. What you're doing is you're using their granting of access to that content and you're sharing that with your students through
Exactly.
through your book, right?
That's right.
So yeah, and so what you've done is you become a part of this community, this global network, because you want your students to go to actual Spanish sites or whatever Spanish speaking sites, if at all possible, as opposed to the ones that you develop for them.
That's right.
Say, okay, now then, who pays for all of this? Where do your students don't pay for any of this, right? No publisher is picking up the tab for this. You're not paying for editors. You're not doing any of that kind of stuff, but you did have to pay for what I'd call the template or the kit or what, and you bought the premium. You didn't go for the basic, okay? You went for the top of the line, right?
Well, I went for the basic to begin with.
Okay. And then you learned your lesson. And now what you're telling us is don't waste your money on the basic, go for the premium because you're going to go for theirs sooner or later.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, it just depends on what type of content you have and how much content you have. I can't remember the exact amount. I think it's, gosh, it's like the amount of space that you can use. I don't remember. It's like, I think I said it was 250 gigabytes. That seems like too much though. 250 megabytes maybe. But the more pictures and stuff you include in there, like all the images that I put in there, I took myself, the pictures I took myself. So, Heidi was like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to know anything about programming? No, but you're going to have to take some pictures or, if you want to include images, they're all mine. So I'm like, I don't mind if people want to use those images because in the text, it says that it's Creative Commons. You can use it, just give it some attributes. So, but needless to say, so yeah, what I'm trying to get at with that, John, is with all of the way that you create in the text, I really, really am hoping that students will get out of my text and they'll go and see other things. And I want them to do that. Yeah.
So who actually bought the press book for you? Did you use your own funds? Did you get university support? How did you get the money for that?
Yeah, I guess that's where I was leading. I got some university support on that. So that, I mean, you may not have that university support, everybody, so I'm sorry. So maybe I'm like being arrogant and hope that I don't come across like that way. But I thought for $50, I'll give it a shot, you know, and even if the university wouldn't support it, well, maybe I can just throw that out myself.
I'm going to speak for a moment. Pittsburgh State University has an OER steering committee. I understand we were one of the first ones in the state, as a matter of fact. And what we do annually is we provide grants to people like Dr. Moss right here. And if he so desires, he could use that grant money to pay for something like Pressbook, or to buy a camera to go out and take more pictures, whatever it is that he wants to do that will support. Now, he also has to come back to the OER steering committee and justify how he spent that money. But you show us a book and you know what we're going to say? Write another grant and get some more money and then go ahead and do it. And then after a while, people are going to say, well, we're tired of Dr. Moss getting all the money. I want some too. And then hopefully that will inspire them. And Dr. Moss, I'm sorry, I defaulted to Dr. Moss because Grant and Grant seemed like it was going to be a little bit confusing right there. Grant got a grant. Okay, so my next one was there any kind of compensation that you got for this? What was the payoff to do OER? Did it help with a promotion, for example? Did it help you get a bump in salary? You know, did it get you some release time? What are some of the benefits or some of the perks that you could get? Because it is a very time-consuming project that you're talking about. I mean, it's, you know, it is no small feat to write a book from page 1 to page last. But you know, the difference is you don't have to work with a publisher, and you know who your audience is. You can make this student-specific to Pittsburgh State University.
That's
it
right.
Doesn't have to be a generic text that will work in California, that will work in Texas, that will work in Florida. It just needs to work in Southeast Kansas, right? Though anybody can take it if they so desire. Okay, so what kind of compensation did you get for this grant?
Well, I did get a grant
Right.
from the OER steering committee, which
You
helped
did,
out
you
quite a
did,
bit.
yeah.
But as far as, yes, everyone, I want to tell you that I got a $10,000 bump on my base. Just kidding. I'm, you know, no, I didn't get any the compensation that I see that is really how it benefits the student there, John. I mean, it does take a long time, yes. And actually the grant was basically, I was considering that my compensation, but you know, I was trying to figure out how many hours I put in on it. That first Spanish text that I worked on, I was thinking about that, and I'm like, I probably put at least 100 hours in one summer. And oh no, actually I did. Actually, I got a summer grant too. So I've had 2 grants.
You applied for something and got it, right?
right,
Outside
right.
of the steering committee, right?
Yes, that's true. I did get another grant as well. So I had forgotten about that. But I didn't, would I have still done it anyway? Probably. And the reason why is because I wasn't really satisfied ever with the textbooks that we were using in our program, which is probably why everybody's here today. You're thinking, well, I'm not, and you know, you're always using different things anyway. So what's happened here is I just thought, well, if I can benefit the students the best way that I can, well, why not give it a shot? And so that was really the compensation for me. I mean, sure, there was a little bit of money involved. I didn't become rich. There's no royalties here. As far as I don't know. Have you got any royalties on yours, John, yet? Because if you have, please let me know.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But it's really, I mean, seriously, the compensation is how I'm benefiting the students. And actually, I was trying to quantify how much money I'd save students based on the money that they'd saved on the old textbook we used to have. The old textbook that they were using here at Pitt State was $180 plus that was for 3 semesters, granted, but they had to pay $50 on top of it for each semester for each of the different, what do you call them, the online access. So they had to pay online access each semester plus $180 book.
Yeah, access codes is what they're called, right?
Yeah, now they are.
And
yeah.
they expire, like they last for a semester or something, and then you have to buy a new one.
Right, and then that doesn't happen with our text. And so I was disappointed with that because I'm like, this is too much. So I was trying to quantify it. And I'm like, okay, if I added up all the students over the years I've worked with and how much I've used OER, how much money have I saved them? Over 10 grand. Yep. So that, I mean. and-
I'm sorry, yeah, I feel like I'm, I'm the only one asking questions. I see the chat is going on in here and I really do appreciate the comments, but people should make those to Grant's ear, not to his eye. Is there someone who wants to ask a question for Grant? Because what I was trying to do is go, Grant knows what he's talking about, but he's been so good at it for so long, he forgets what it's like to be totally ignorant. So I'm in here to fill that breach. Okay, so I have no problem speaking from ignorance. Thank goodness for ignorance. It's why teachers have jobs. Is there someone else? Is there someone else who wants to ask questions? Is there someone else who wants to make some comments to Grant? Even if all you want to tell him is, I think this is a great idea, and I think I'm going to steal it from you. So let me pause for a couple of seconds here and let other people go ahead and join in the discussion, because it should be a dialogue with all of us, not just Grant and me.
Hi, my name's Adriana. I'm with Garden City Community College. You kind of answered my question with your statement of the cost and access codes. My question initially was, aside from the cost, what other advantages have you noticed from deviating from resources like Cengage? Or is accessibility like your main goal?
Yeah, that's, I just saw your question in the chat there. You prefer Addie or you prefer Adriana?
Oh, either or.
Okay.
It depends
Well-
on who can't say Adriana.
Hey, no problem. Like, there's not a problem here with Adriana. Okay, so what I was going to say is both. The answer to that is both. I wanted more accessibility, but I also was tired of waiting for the next edition of the text. Now, granted, it's getting a little better with the online access codes, so to speak, but at least if there's a problem in my text, in fact, I noticed the other day there was a typographical error. I went in and changed it that minute. Well, okay, I waited until I got out of class, but do you know what I mean? That's one thing that I really like about it, is I don't have to wait for the publisher to tell me what I need to do in my class. Now, sure, you'll notice in my text that there's a lot of me embedded in there, and actually we've adapted it a little bit since I started 7 years ago creating it, and my other colleagues have adopted it as well. So they're starting to see, oh, this is a lot of Grant. How can I put me in here? And that's what the discussion is now, because we're like, let's get it all, because pretty soon I'm not going to be the video. Like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be other people from the Spanish speaking world. So yeah, it's both. I love the fact that I can just make the changes and I don't have to rely on all this upcoming the additions that are coming out, or if the answer key's wrong and things of that nature. Now, sure, like I said up front, there's a lot of work to put in. In fact, I spent the whole summer, I think it was 2015, spent the whole summer just working away at it. But now I don't have to worry about anything except for making the adjustments. So does that help, Addie? We talked a lot to me there, but what you don't know is Dr. Franklin, I think you've received some grants too, but we wouldn't confuse your first name with grants. But you've how many OER texts have you created for your classes there, John?
Well, thank you for asking me that question. I'm gonna go in a very different direction from the way that Grant went, because Grant actually worked with Jennifer, who is one of my very favorite people on campus here at Pittsburgh State University. She's at the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology. And I came at the whole enterprise in a very different direction. What happened was the textbook that I was using for my literature for middle and secondary schools class went out of print. And I knew the professor, he was a University of Kansas professor. I had a couple of complaints about the book. One was that it was always out of date. By the time he had finished writing stuff about young adult literature, it was already 2 years behind the latest titles that were coming out for young adult literature. So you remember that what I do is I help people become middle and secondary school language arts and English teachers. So I thought what I'm going to do is take some of the lessons, the same way that Grant has, the same way that you can do, some of the same lessons that you have been teaching in your class, I'm going to write them. Why? Because I'm a professor, because I'm a teacher, because I'm a composer. And so I spent, I don't know, a year with a fountain pen. I can show you the fountain pen. It's a Parker Duofold. It's got an 18 karat gold nib, and it's one of my favorite toys in the entire world. It's like writing with butter. Once you get used to writing like something like this, a keyboard is so clackety clack and pencils are so leaden. And just the other things, I can write 30 pages a day with this fountain pen by hand, whereas the other stuff I can't. So I started writing out essays, and the essays eventually became chapters. And as I began to write the book, because I realized that's what I was doing, I was writing a book. And I'm here to tell you, if I can do it, you can do it. I sat down and wrote about 12 essays. Did it take a long time? Yeah, it took a year. Okay, why? Because I'm busy. I've got other things to do. And so they're called acquisitions editors. And so I had 2 of them within that year show up at my office. They came from Pearson. Is that one of the great textbook companies? And I forget what the other one was, but they were dropping by and they had heard that I was doing this, and they were coming in and they were all really, really interested. And they were asking me questions. They were asking, how many students do you have? And I said, well, it's really New Testament. They said, what do you mean? I said, I usually have 12 students in that class every year. It's really New Testament. And they said, well, you know what? We're not going to make any money off of that. And I was like, well, you know, how is that my problem? I don't care if you make money or not. I'm not a teacher to make money, but they are in publishing to make money. And I'm here to tell you that was the genesis for a paper that eventually became one called Price, Profit, Privilege, Parents, Publishers, Professors. And I was able to present that paper at a conference in Oxford one year. And what I did was I went through and I crunched some numbers, like how much it costs to go to these different schools, how much they estimate textbook costs are. And so I was able to come to some conclusions. And the conclusion was, we as parents can't really do much about tuition. Okay, we just flat out can't. We can't do much about room and board, but we can do something about textbook costs. And so, people in bookstores hate me, but I go, we want to have some kind of control. And this is one of the controls that we want to have. And it's over cost right here. So when I realized I was never going to be able to work with a publisher, I thought there's 2 things going on. One is all of a sudden I have a lot more freedom. Grant has a lot more freedom. He can go in after class and correct something in his book. He can do it right there. If he wants to add something, he can add something. And I could be wrong, but I think Pressbook will even change the number of pages to reflect what he's added in there. You try and work with a publisher to change something, it's not going to happen. It takes an act of Congress to have a second edition or robust sales. That's why Bushman's book went out of print. It wasn't selling enough. So I realized I wasn't going to have to work with those people. Now, I happen to have written a dissertation about editing, though mine was about the work that people like Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway did with their editor, Marjorie Canaan Rawlings also, because they're at the University of Florida, and her home, Cross Creek, was within bicycling distance of the campus. So I used to go out and write at her picnic table whenever I was writing on my dissertation. And I realized that not having to do that gave me a lot more freedom. So I began to envision the kind of book that I wanted. And what I wanted was something that reflected my other great love besides teaching, and that is traveling. And what I thought about traveling was a guidebook. And when I began to think about a guidebook, I began to think in terms of small books. I began to think in terms of something like, I don't know if they still use it anymore. It's called Elements of Style by Strunk and White. There's a couple of other ones. One of my other favorite books, let me see if I can find it right here. I love this edition of the Tao Te Ching because it's the Wu translation. I think it's the best one just because it's the most succinct. So what I wanted was something that would literally fit in your pocket. And that's my book right here. It literally fits in my pocket. So what I did was I went to sources on campus, printing and design. And I spoke with someone named Diane Latner at some kind of event that they were having, a festival. And I asked her if she'd be willing to work with me, if she'd be interested. And she said yes. So then somebody from the OER steering committee heard about it and asked me if I'd want to go and talk to those people. So I went over and talked to those people. What I did then was I used money that I was given for professional development by teaching writing to learn classes. I get $250 a class for teaching a writing to learn class, which means I read an awful lot of essays in the semester for English 113, general literature. And I asked permission of a vice president, could I use my writing to learn money to finance publishing this book? And I've got the support of the OER steering committee. And the answer was yes. And so it took, and I told him in February, if you tell me yes, I'll have this book in my students' hands in the spring of next year. And I did. It was done before the end of December. If you were to ask me how it happened, I would say, talk to Diane. But I'm here to tell you the experience was such that she retired soon afterwards. So nobody else is going to be able to help her or get her help on that kind of book. But it's an amazing book. The people who love that book best, this book, it's called ELA for MS. It's a guidebook for beginning teachers. The people who love it best are supportive, cooperating teachers, experienced teachers. They love to read that book. You can access it. I'll give you the connections that you have to use. You go to the Pittsburgh State University, PSU, and you land on their page. And you'll see like lots of pretty pictures of campus. It probably looks a lot like your landing page. And then you go way down towards the bottom and you look for something called University Directory. And it's probably something about like yours, but your directory is going to be in a different part of the screen. Ours, you scroll all the way down to the bottom. And then you click on that link, University Directory. And if I'm speaking too fast, just get back in touch with me. Sarah knows how to get a hold of me. Katie knows how to get a hold of me. And then you go to library services. So there's a list, you scroll down, it's in alphabetical order, library services. It's a link, you click it. You click on that link and it will take you to our campus library, Axe Library. You go up to the top and on the far left-hand side, you'll see the word find. You click on find, then you look for resources. It'll be on the far right-hand side. So far it's University Directory to library services to find to resources. And at the top of the menu for resources is the term Digital Commons. And that's where my presence is. It's in the Digital Commons of the Axe Library, which is the university campus library for Pittsburgh State University. And then you can use any of several different search terms. There'll be a search box for you. You can use my name, John Franklin. You can use the title of this book, ELA for MS. ELA for MS means English and Language Arts for middle and secondary schools, because I know I'm talking to a math teacher also, but that's what ELA for MS is. We just call it the guidebook because that's the easiest thing to call it. Or you can type in Professor Franklin, because the other resources to which Grant alluded are Professor Franklin's annotated bibliography for young adult literature, 2017 through 2018. There's like 40 or 50,000 pages of young adult literature I read every 2 years. And then I'll go ahead and I turn it into notes. So there's an annotated version, then an unannotated version. And then it's the same for 2019 through 2020. And I'm working on the 21 through 22 edition right now. And I just busted through the 35,000, just finished over 100 books that I got started last year. I'm speaking as an English teacher. And so what'll happen is that English teachers in the field, oftentimes my former students, will get in touch with me and they'll say, I have this student, 8th grader, likes this kind of book. I'm not going to send them to that resource. I'm going to go to that resource myself. And I'm going to say, I'll give you a list of 5 or 6 books. If they read them all and want more, let me know and I'll go back and do something else. Why? Because I have something called office hours. I am blessed with office hours. High school teachers don't have office hours. They have planning periods. You know what they do on their planning periods? They teach. They're either working in IEPs or they're working individually with students or they're serving on committees. They just don't have the same kind of luxury of time that I have. So I'll go through and I will pick out books for them. How often do I do this? Oh, I don't know, double-digit times a year for people. Does it save them a lot of time? Yes, it does. Does it help students become lifelong readers? I hope it does, because certainly that's the model that I'm trying to create and maintain. A couple of years ago, just last year, the Tilford Group, which is, if you know who Michael Tilford is, this is the diversity group. And so they have something called Tilford Reads. One of the outreach librarians asked me, can you write a study guide? Can you help us with this? I looked at him and went, Jorge, do you have any idea how much trouble it is to write a study guide? I read that book 5 times before the study guide was ready. It was called The Best We Could Do. It's a graphic memoir by Tan Bui. It's about boat people. They came over from Vietnam, and it's got all the kinds of dysfunctional family and everything else. It's a graphic novel. So I wrote the study guide for that. It's in my digital presence as well there. If you're not an English teacher or you're not interested in diversity, you probably don't want my resources. But I'm here to tell you, it was a proud day in my life. We get a digital dashboard, and so it will tell me around the world where people are looking at my resources. And I was going, Vietnam, Vietnam, this is the boat people. I want that study guide to be used in Vietnam. And I got a hit from Hanoi and then Ho Chi Minh City, used to be known as Saigon. So I went, okay, now now we're all the way from Pittsburgh, Kansas into Vietnam. I don't go to the same kind of work that Grant goes to. He works with a digital template is what he does. I work with human resources and I work with literature. And so the way that I take things is from a different pedagogical viewpoint. And I don't do anything that's particularly interactive either. But what I am able to bring is currency to everything that I do, so that I can go ahead and I can update PFAB Y'all every 2 years and bring out new stuff. And I'm also going to do what all professors do. I'm thinking about my next book, and it's going to be the next version of ELA for MS, because this book is restricted to literature because I had a colleague who taught composition or how to teach writing. He retired, and my reward for him retiring was I got promoted. Now I'm the director of English education, no bump in pay. It's promotion through attrition without any kind of compensation. So guess what I'm going to put in the next version of ELA for MS? And you know who I'm looking for right now? I'm looking for somebody who can do what Diane did, because I can't do that. Okay, so I need to go ahead and do those kinds of things. The amount of time that Grant spends with his keyboard and putting things into his book, I just don't do that. And the reason I don't do that is I can't. Well, I mean, I guess I could, but I'd rather not. I'd rather read 50,000 pages of young adult literature every 2 years, take notes and make that available to other people. Okay, but but I'm also not applying for grants to support me in any of this kind of stuff. This is what I do during my office hours. And there's no doubt in my mind that I'm going to find someone who can do that. I think his name is going to be Jason Kermashek, and I think he's over in printing and design. And I think that he kept all the files from the first edition of ELA for MS, and I think we're going to be able to work with those for the second edition. So that's where I'm coming from. So when I found out what I was going to be doing on this panel, I thought, I think I'm basically going to be useless for people. I mean, I don't see what I have to offer to tell you, this is how you can work. And what Grant does is ever so much more valuable to you than what I do for you, unless you are a middle or secondary school language arts or English teacher who needs advice about young adult literature or how to teach ELA for MS. So mine is much more content driven. If you ask me what my platforms are, well, I'd say one of them is print. Okay? And one of the reasons I wanted print was I think it's more valuable if people can actually touch it, especially when, I think it was the former provost, Dr. Olson, said, can I take this to the Board of Regents? He didn't want to show it on a screen. She wanted to actually hand somebody a book. Why? I don't know, because people like things. I mean, I also prefer writing with a fountain pen than writing at the keyboard. I hate writing at the keyboard. I have to keep doing the human auto spell check. And you know how many mistakes I make writing. I never misspell with this pen. It has 100% spelling accuracy. My keyboard, on the other hand, it sucks. SUX. So I much prefer what I do. I know it's more time consuming. It's probably what they might call old school or traditional, but I also feel that in some way it adds a sense of visceral reality to the enterprise that might not otherwise be there. And I'm also here to tell you, I have a lot of respect for what Grant does, but when all the books kind of look the same, I think after a while you go, I want to make it different. I mean, I could be wrong, Grant, but I think you want your next book to look different. Why? Because you've already done that before. You want to do something else instead. Now, for this book also, one of the things that I loved is that, I don't know if you can see this photo or not. I took all the pictures for this book. And so one of the threads is a journey. And the journey was the Little Red Schoolhouse Project. And it starts in Independence, Kansas. I think that's where Sarah's from, isn't she? Independence Community College, because that's where the Little House on the Prairie is. And beside the Little House on the Prairie, there's a one-room schoolhouse that Bill Curtis, America's Most Wanted, had refurbished in honor of his mother-in-law. That's where she taught. So that was the western terminus for the journey that is the Little Red Schoolhouse Project. The eastern terminus is Prince Edward Island. That's where Anne of Green Gables taught. And you can find the actual schoolhouse where Lucy Maud Montgomery, the author of Anne of Green Gables series, taught. So I invited my eldest daughter, Josie, to come along with me on the trip. And this is Josie and me at Niagara Falls, because I went to SUNY Oswego. I had some research questions to ask, and they had some answers at SUNY Oswego, and they had a one-room schoolhouse that they had converted into a tourist information center. Has anybody here ever been to Niagara Falls? Okay. Do you remember how loud it was, Grant? It's incredibly loud. I was ready for the roar of the falls. You know what I wasn't ready for, Grant? The rainbows. There were so many rainbows the day that we saw Niagara Falls. And if you look, there's a rainbow. I don't know if you can see it or not. There's a rainbow right over Josie's shoulder. You think a publisher is going to let me put a picture of my oldest daughter at Niagara Falls with a rainbow over her shoulder in the middle of the book? I don't think so. So, so when I say it gave me some freedom, the book really does exemplify, symbolize academic freedom at its highest level. Okay, I think I've talked for 9 minutes now, and so now I think it's time for me to be quiet. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? Oh, I love this right here. My mind works better from hand to pen than to a keyboard when writing. Yes, I think there's a direct connection that goes right down the middle of it. You know who I really admire? People who can write with a fountain pen and they're left-handed. Those are people I really, because your hand will drag through the ink if you don't watch out. Josie's left-handed. I actually found her a beginner's fountain pen for left-handed people. Took me years to find that fountain pen, but she can write with a fountain pen.
I had an English teacher who could write with both hands, and he showed us on like the first day of class. He wrote his name at the same time with both hands on the chalkboard.
That's pretty amazing.
Well, I got excited. I had my fountain pen in my hand when you were talking. I'll read.
Okay. Are you the one who wrote that comment about the fountain pen?
Yes,
Okay. Well, I thought it would be the artist who would say something, who would write something like that. Tell me, what kind of fountain pen is that, Tracy?
I got this one from Japan. It says online. I think it's German, actually. I think
Oh, okay.
but I got it in Japan. So.
Okay, do you want me to show you some of my other fountain pens? I've got 5 of them on my writing table right behind me here. I'll show you my Japanese fountain pen. This is a Sailor 1911L. Do you know anything about fountain
I
pens?
have a Sailor also. Is it a wooden one?
No. This one is acrylic, but it's an L, so it's got a 21 karat gold nib. And it's like,
We're in different realms
this is my present to myself when I got promoted to full professor. Was I've been in it's orange also, because I went to the University of Florida, right? God must be a gator too, because he made the sun orange and the sky blue, right? So I decided I wanted an orange fountain pen for my.
I bought a green Coach bag when I graduated from Michigan State, so it's okay.
Oh, that makes perfect sense too. Yeah, Coach is really nice. Okay, yeah, you got to go for the classics when you hit one of those milestones, right? Coach, Sailor. Those are because people who have been on that journey, when you hit that milestone, they appreciate it as well. The only thing better would be if somebody had given you the Coach bag, but
I told my husband, this. I'm going to be purchasing this. Please go buy yourself something.
Well, what did he do to deserve that? 2 people got to celebrate that.
Well, I don't cook, so he does all the cooking, or did.
Oh, okay.
While I was studying, so.
Did he buy cookware?
I actually bought him the cookware, and I said, "Here, make me stuff with this." I'm terrible. I really enjoyed the way you talk about your thought process and how it all came about, and I think met in the same situation. And then I always get kind of that feeling of uh, imposter feeling kind of creeps up because I love sharing my love of teaching Japanese and using technology in new and interesting ways. But I'm not Japanese, even though I lived in Japan for 10 years. And, my accent's pretty good since I was there as a child. But that imposter syndrome sneaks in. I think, well, what can I really offer? Because I'm not a native speaker. So
Well, I'm in that same boat there, Tracy, but
feel
what's
that
really
too?
neat about it, and that's what's great about OER, is you
Yeah.
make it you. It doesn't just have to be you, but it can
Right.
be, I mean, we saw a picture that John showed, it's him, you saw the videos with me, it's
Right. I
me.
love that.
And
Right.
that's what's really neat about it. Now, is that going to attract a bunch of people across the world? Maybe not necessarily, but it shows your students that you're willing to, you make mistakes, you're a human being,
Right.
and but you also take a lot of pride in what you do. So there's that really neat aspect of being able, it's yours, and but also you're showing I'm willing to put forth this extra effort to help strengthen you guys. So let's move forward with it. That's what I really like about it the most.
That's what I've gotten from my students when I take them into, I keep talking about GatherTown, but I took them into GatherTown the other day, and my students who are software programmers all sent me messages saying, thank you for taking this extra time
Mhm.
for making something that we could use. So that felt really good. So maybe I'm okay.
Does anybody want to ask me what was the hardest thing about writing the book?
Refilling your,
What was the hardest thing?
The hardest thing about writing the book was making it shorter, because my perception is that students think in screens these days. So I have a chapter, and it was not originally one screen long, but it's called Tragedy for Non-English Majors. And I take 200 pages of Aristotle and I squeeze it down to one screen. And that's all you have to remember about tragedy. Character or characters will fall from a high place. Character or characters will die in this play. And if you can remember those two things, that's tragedy for non-English majors. There's no need for you to go and read 200 pages of Aristotle. I already did that for you. And so that's what I gave my students who are going to go off and teach Shakespeare in high school. I mean, they can go and do what my colleague, Paul McCallum teaches in his Shakespeare course, or Lyle Morgan before him, or Stephen Teller before him. And you know who's going to be listening to it? You know who's going to be reading it? Not their high school students. You know what they're going to read? The one screen essay called Tragedy for Non-English Majors. So when I say, we can tailor things to meet our students' needs, this is, to me, absolutely one of the beauties of OER. Because so many, they used to call them handbooks, then I called them bicep books, because publishers were trying to get these English handbooks to meet every possible need. And so what do you really need? Like maybe a quarter of a book that costs $50. Well, it's like Geico. You want to bundle things. You don't want to pay for stuff that you don't need. So that's what that is, for me, really is one of the beauties of OER. And I saw one of the comments about making things specific for your students. Yeah, once you take a student-centered attitude towards this task, I think at that particular point, and you have to be cold-blooded. I mean, you have to be very, very, you have to be able to wield a scalpel in order to make things so concise that they meet the needs of your students without meeting everybody else's students' needs. And that, and I think that, and the thing about it is if a new need comes around, what do, Grant? You just put it in the book, right? Because the book's yours and you get to go ahead and do that. But I also have to tell you, I mean, it's so great on the first day of class in English 478, and I just take a bunch of these books to class and I give them to students and say, this is yours. It's free of charge, compliments of Pittsburgh State University. And I hope that they take that attitude back to middle and secondary school whenever they go through K through 12. I'm sorry, it looks like I chased half the audience away with my stories right there, but that's okay.
I think it's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Absolutely my pleasure. It was all I have to share. I don't have very much more.
I don't have anything else to say either, especially, I mean, I think we probably talked about our two different approaches that could help. Hopefully they've helped everybody here. What else do you want to know before we say goodbye today?
In your press books, are you able to attach, like, I guess you could link it to like a Google Doc or something that a student could then download, right? So,
Or if you wanted, you could actually just take your content, I mean, what I did is I already had a bunch of my notes around. I just cut and paste them,
mhm.
cut, paste, and but I don't know how well that's going to work with your Japanese characters.
Well, I have this other thing that I did, which is with possible selves theory and language learning.
Mhm.
And I created it so that it could be used for, teachers of other languages can take it and turn it into what they need for their students.
Mhm.
And so it's out there on a website right now. Just like, here's the stuff and go ahead and download it. But could I put that in something like a press book and
Oh,
then
yeah.
have links to each of those templates?
Very easily. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, you could do that. And it's really simple. At least from my view. So I'll show you the link I've got here. Here's this link right here. I just embedded that link there. You could, it can be any link that I want. In fact, I could put your link in here.
Mhm.
It would take people to your link if you wanted.
Right.
I promise I won't do that yet. Just teasing you. But no, I
That's
mean,
okay.
and then it's available for everybody. So yeah, you can put any type of link you want in there. What's great about it is you could put I don't know, the Japanese government's webpage as one of your links and say, just say, this content doesn't belong to me. And you're now clicking out of my book, but here you go. And
Right.
students can be like, wow, that's what the Japanese government webpage looks like. Cool.
Right.
Or you can have them link to YouTube videos about anime really, the sky's the
Or
limit.
classic Japanese cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or-
I'm not an anime or a manga person. That's not how I got to Japan, but I have to, work my audience.
Yeah, that's right.
I want them to enroll, so I get paid. So, all right. I really appreciate you answering those questions. That really helps me kind of like focus because I was all over the place.
Let's
Does-
see. So Judy, your question, are you asking a question here about? Oh yeah, you can press books. You can use. You're asking about if it's quickly. Let's see. It says you can adjust sections or entire chapters if needed on a fairly rapid schedule. Yes, it is possible. It takes time to be. Once you've got it set up and you've got how you want the book to be organized, you can go in and make any changes that you want. Like, let's say you didn't like one of the chapters at all, you can get rid of it. The only challenge is, and this is something I use an open educational resource for my Spanish 4 class, and it comes from KU. And I'm hoping they don't just change things immediately, like from one day to the next. And they do update their content every year. That's good, but you might just want to throw out, we're going to update some content here, because otherwise one day, if one, like in the middle of the semester, if one thing's there and then the next day it's not there, someone might get a little freaked out. But then again, well, what I liked what John Perkins said yesterday. He's like, we're providing OER and people get mad at us. It's like, well, it's free. It's open, it's educational, it's a resource. It's not, I'm not a publisher. And so he's like, sometimes people get angry at that, but just something to consider if you do make a big change like that. Does that make sense?
Yes. One of the particular courses is server-side development.
Mhm.
And the concepts behind it, the .NET and C#, which probably means nothing to anyone, but they are in a state of flux. So from the first time I wrote the course, by the time the course actually got on the LMS, it was outdated.
Right.
So I've been constantly updating this course for years.
Well, and that's the thing is if you're updating your course anyway, and you have a resource that's there, it's like what John's saying, you could have your text could be all of your notes,
Mhm.
really. And then you're like, oh man, look, they've just made that change to C++. Great. Well, I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to make the change right now.
Mhm.
You can do that.
Judy, what you're talking about also, to my way, if you take, because I work with Canvas, that's what we have at PSU. And so we work with modules. And my way of thinking is that a module is just like a chapter.
Mhm.
And then, your quizzes are keyed to your module. So at that point, it becomes to my, and of course, I have essay assignments also because I'm an English professor. But that is a textbook. It's just called the learning management system instead. And in my way of thinking, I'd be willing to say you're writing a textbook every year when you are
Mhm.
updating the resources for your students. Do I think
Precisely.
you ought to get credit for that? Yeah, and I think you ought to get a bump in pay as well.
Not likely, but yeah.
Well, it's not going to stop me from thinking that.
Okay, so since I haven't asked many questions, John, just my last question, I guess, before we're done here is, how much does it cost to produce the ELA for MS? Just out of curiosity,
Per copy,
per copy.
$8.
Yeah, see, so I mean, even if you wanted to charge for that text, for crying out loud, that's still what, 10 times cheaper than what a Pearson or
Yeah, and it's probably 10 times shorter as well. But yeah, you have to remember, I didn't have to pay Diane anything for what she did. I mean, the $8 is the cost of the paper. That's about all that, and they took that out of my professional development money. And I ordered however many dozens of copies of books so I could go ahead and keep it going. But that's the difference between this and, publishers. You're right. Try and find if you find an $8 book, it's because it's the third edition and we're already up to the seventh edition. All this stuff that we talk about with textbooks, that was part of what I researched whenever I did price, profit, privilege. And textbook writers are under an awful lot of pressure to revise their textbooks every year, even if all they do is change the math problems in a book so that students are forced to buy the next edition. And that, is that right or is it wrong? Well, in my world, it's expensive. And if you have enough money to pay for stuff like that, I don't have a problem with that. Go ahead and spend it on that book. But my experience was that when I was asking students to buy these anthologies of literature, they weren't. They just weren't buying the books. And why? Because they needed to spend the money on their major books, not on a gen ed book. And at that point I went, this is a lose-lose situation I'm in right now. And that's when Canvas, and this is, I'm thinking of this because of Judy's comment, but that's when my Canvas became virtually a new textbook with, does it have the latest literature? No, it's got literature that's in the public domain. So we don't have to pay royalties. William Shakespeare's dead. He's not going to ask for royalties anymore.
How does the printing take place for your book?
We have printing and design services on
Ah,
campus. So, I actually go over to some people and, Diane would have been able to tell you which program she used and all the rest of those kinds of things. And, and what would happen is I would go in and I would just, and when we would have arguments, she would always win the arguments. And the reason why is because it's like, his editor once told Fitzgerald, it's going to be published the way the last person touches it. Who's that? The typesetter back in those days. Okay, you can't make any changes past the typesetter. I can't make any changes past the person at the keyboard, and that was Diane. And then whatever kind of fancy files she sent over to printing and design, that's what they go ahead and work with. Now, she sent me Word documents so that I could edit within the Word document. And then what I also did was, I took the photos off my memory card from the DSLR, and I told her which ones wanted to go where. And she had some good ideas, like the captions for the photos are in a different font from the fonts that are in the chapters. And she was just so much better than me at what I was doing. And, let's face it, you start with a handwritten document and you end up with a book. And that's, in my world, that's kind of a big accomplishment.
I have a small publishing imprint, so I'm familiar with some of the processes.
Oh, you're a publisher?
It's very small, very small.
I don't care. I'm impressed. What do you publish?
Well, I live in Texas now, but I used to live in Kentucky. I did a lot of like local lore and history, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
folklore.
Mhm.
Yeah, local culture. Where in Texas do you live?
I am just a little east of Austin.
Okay. I taught in Nacogdoches while I was ABD at Stephen F. Austin.
Mhm.
I don't know how close that is to where you are.
I'm not entirely sure where that's at. I know
Okay,
mo- I've been
it's
here
on
3
the edge of
years.
the Piney Woods. Yeah, it's a really, big house in the Piney Woods kind of place. One of the highlights of my research career was going to the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas and being able to hold the letters that Fitzgerald and Hemingway had written.
Oh,
You're right. Yeah, adjusting sections or entire chapters, that you can almost do this right after a class, and get things ready. In the best of all possible worlds, I would have a student assistant who is going to learn to be a middle or secondary school language arts or English teacher helping me with this project. And then they would be able to take the knowledge of this book into their own classroom whenever they would teach. And that would make an uber teacher, I really do think.
mhm.
Yeah, and Judy, if you want, you can really even get some of your students involved with you as well. And
I've got some very knowledgeable students who,
Yeah.
from term to term, are helping like, to get them involved in like a book project. That'd be great.
and especially if you're putting it at Creative Commons and
Mhm.
you put your name and everyone who contributed to this, it's neat because then they also have a way to say, oh, not only did I take classes with Judy, but I also contributed to the text that she's using, for crying out loud. And then
Mhm.
it's a neat thing they can put on their CV too. So
That's what's been so good about these sessions, because I am just getting into this area, and it's given me so many ideas. I need to kind of refine it down.
it might conflict a little bit with your print. Anyway,
We're pretty much we're the online presence for University of Arkansas, or one of them anyway. So OER is the thing we're being encouraged to do.
sure, yeah. Okay, Sarah, I think, yeah, we're done.
Okay, I just like once again to thank the two of you for presenting and sharing your knowledge on these things, and to our participants. Hopefully you've had a great couple of days of finding out information. Just always remember that there's the OER subcommittee, so there are things going on at the state level with representatives from all the public colleges in Kansas, and pretty much everyone on that committee are huge supporters of OER initiatives. So if there's ever any questions, I really encourage you to reach out to any of us on that subcommittee, and to all the presenters at this workshop. Their information is on Sketch, and hopefully this will become a yearly thing in the state of Kansas, maybe going back to face sometime. And really want to just thank you once again for participating.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody. Great to talk
Thanks.
to you.